August 6, 1945. A single American bomber flew over Hiroshima. 16 hours later, in a concrete bunker beneath Tokyo's Imperial General Headquarters, Japan's most powerful military leaders sat around a table, reading the same intelligence reports over and over again. One city, one bomb, 80,000 dead. War Minister General Korechika Anami slammed his fist on the table. Impossible, he declared. The Americans are bluffing, but they weren't bluffing, and Japan's refusal to believe what was happening would cost another 40,000 lives in Nagasaki just 3 days later. This is the story of how scientific certainty, military pride, and strategic miscalculation created one of history's most tragic blind spots. This is the story of how Japan's leaders couldn't or wouldn't believe that America had changed warfare forever. Welcome back to the channel. If you're interested in World War II history and the decisions that shaped our modern world, you're going to want to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because today's video reveals shocking details that most history books leave out. To understand why Japan's military dismissed the atomic bomb, we need to go back to 1943, because here's the thing most people don't know. Japan wasn't just a victim of atomic weapons, they were trying to build them too. Dr. Yoshio Nishina was Japan's leading nuclear physicist. Educated in Europe, he had worked with Niels Bohr in Copenhagen and was considered the founding father of modern physics research in Japan. He was brilliant, respected internationally, and he led Japan's own atomic bomb program called NIGO. The Imperial Japanese Army had given Nishina the resources to pursue nuclear weapons. He understood the theory perfectly. He knew that splitting uranium atoms could release unimaginable energy. He had even discovered the uranium-237 isotope himself. But there was one critical problem, one that Nishina knew better than anyone else on Earth. Building an atomic bomb wasn't just about understanding the science. It was about industrial capacity. You needed to separate uranium-235 from uranium-238, an extraordinarily difficult process requiring massive facilities, thousands of technicians, and resources that Japan simply didn't have. In June 1945, just 2 months before Hiroshima, Nishina had declared his own atomic bomb project over. Japan's facilities had been bombed. Resources were scarce. The conclusion was clear. If Japan couldn't build an atomic bomb with all their scientific knowledge, how could America, already stretched thin, fighting a two-front war, possibly have succeeded? This wasn't ignorance. This was expert analysis, and it would prove to be catastrophically wrong. The morning of August 6 started like many others in Tokyo. Air raid sirens were routine. The systematic destruction of Japanese cities through firebombing had become grimly predictable. Tokyo itself had been devastated just months earlier in March, with a single conventional raid killing an estimated 100,000 people. Then the reports from Hiroshima started arriving. They were confusing, contradictory. The entire city had been destroyed but by a single plane, a single bomb. The numbers seemed impossible. The descriptions seemed like something from science fiction. At the Imperial General Headquarters, military leaders faced a decision. Was this real, or was it American psychological warfare? After all, President Truman's statement claiming an atomic bomb could have been propaganda designed to terrorize Japan into surrender. War Minister Anami was skeptical. He had reason to be. The firebombing of Tokyo on March 9 to 10, 1945, had killed more people in one night than the preliminary reports from Hiroshima suggested. From a purely military standpoint, even if this new bomb existed, it wasn't necessarily a game changer. but the Supreme War Council, known as the Big Six, needed to know for certain, and there was only one man in Japan qualified to make that determination. On the morning of August 7th, just one day after the bombing, military officers arrived at Dr. Nishina's laboratory in Tokyo with urgent orders. The 54-year-old physicist was instructed to fly immediately to Hiroshima and determine whether the Americans had actually used an atomic bomb. Nishina assembled a team of scientists and departed for what remained of Hiroshima. What he encountered there would haunt him for the rest of his life. The city wasn't just destroyed, it was transformed. Buildings hadn't simply collapsed, they had been vaporized. Shadows of human beings were burned into concrete walls. Survivors showed symptoms that conventional weapons didn't produce: radiation sickness. Though Nishina didn't yet have a term for it, as a physicist, Nishina knew exactly what to look for. He measured radiation levels. He analyzed the pattern of destruction. He examined the unique signatures that only nuclear fission could produce. The evidence was undeniable. On August 8th, Nishina wired his confirmation back to Tokyo. Yes, it was an atomic bomb. The Americans had achieved what he had believed impossible. They had solved the industrial and technical challenges that had defeated Japan's own program. The implications were staggering. If America could build one atomic bomb, they could build more. The strategic situation had fundamentally changed. But in Tokyo's Imperial General Headquarters, Nishina's report landed like a stone in a pond, creating ripples of disbelief rather than waves of action. August 9th would become what Foreign Minister Shigenori Togo a bad day, the understatement of the century. That morning, the Big Six convened to discuss Nishina's report. The six most powerful men in Japan sat in that room: Prime Minister Admiral Kantaro Suzuki, Foreign Minister Togo, War Minister General Anami, Navy Minister Admiral Mitsumasa Yonai, Army Chief of Staff General Yoshijiro Umezu, and Navy Chief of Staff Admiral Soimu Toyoda. Three of them, Togo, Suzuki, and Yonai, believed the atomic bomb changed everything. They advocated accepting the Potsdam Declaration, the Allied surrender terms that had been broadcast in July, but three of them, Anami, Umezu, and Toyoda, weren't convinced. And under Japan's governing system, the Big Six could only act unanimously. They were deadlocked. General Anami's objections were rooted in military logic, not stupidity. Yes, Hiroshima was destroyed by one bomb, but so what? Tokyo had been destroyed by 279 B-29s, dropping 1,665 tons of incendiary bombs. The death toll had been comparable. From Anami's perspective, America had simply developed a more efficient delivery system for mass destruction, not a fundamental game changer. More importantly, Anami believed, and military intelligence supported him, that America couldn't possibly have many of these weapons. The scientific and industrial resources required must have been enormous. Surely they had used their only bomb, or perhaps one of two prototypes. Army Chief of Staff Umezu agreed. He argued that Japan's strategy, called Ketsugo, or Operation Decisive, remained viable. The plan called for a massive defense of the Japanese homeland, designed to inflict such catastrophic casualties on invading American forces that better peace terms could be negotiated. Then, in the middle of their debate, a messenger entered the room with two pieces of news. First, the Soviet Union had declared war on Japan and was invading Manchuria. Second, a second atomic bomb had just destroyed the city of Nagasaki. The room fell silent. The Nagasaki bomb shattered more than a city. It destroyed the logic of Japan's military leadership. If America had two atomic bombs, they might have 3, or 5, or 10. and if they could produce them at any meaningful rate, the entire strategic calculation collapsed. The firebombing of Tokyo had required 279 bombers, thousands of crew members, and massive logistical support. It could be defended against with fighters and anti-aircraft guns. Targets could be dispersed. Populations could be evacuated. But one plane, a single B-29, flying too high to intercept effectively, carrying one bomb that could obliterate an entire city, that couldn't be defended against. And if America had a stockpile of these weapons, Japan's cities would be erased one by one until nothing remained. The Soviet invasion compounded the crisis. Japan had been desperately hoping to use Stalin as a mediator, to negotiate something better than unconditional surrender. Foreign Minister Togo had spent months pursuing this diplomatic channel. It was the last remaining avenue for a negotiated peace. Now that doors slammed shut, Russia wasn't interested in mediating. They wanted their share of the spoils. But here's the crucial detail that many historians overlook. Even after Nagasaki, even after Soviet entry, the Big Six remained deadlocked. 3 for surrender, 3 for fighting to the end. Military pride and samurai tradition ran deep. General Anami and the chiefs of staff still advocated for Operation Decisive, still believed that a homeland battle could force better terms. The debate raged throughout August 9th and into the night. According to Foreign Minister Togo's later account, the arguments were forceful and emotional. Anami demanded that, if Japan did surrender, 3 additional conditions must be attached. Japan would disarm its own forces, Japan would conduct its own war crimes trials, and there would be no occupation of Japan. These weren't just military conditions, they were attempts to preserve the warrior culture and honor system that had defined Japan for centuries. To Anami, unconditional surrender wasn't just defeat, it was civilizational extinction. The meeting continued until 2 a.m. on August 10th. By then, participants were exhausted, positions had hardened, and no resolution was in sight. At 2 a.m., in an unprecedented move, Prime Minister Suzuki made a request that broke 2,600 years of Japanese political tradition. He respectfully begged Emperor Hirohito to make the decision himself. Japanese emperors were divine figures, above politics. They reigned but did not rule. For the emperor to personally decide government policy was virtually unheard of. But the situation was desperate, and Suzuki knew that only the emperor's word could break the deadlock. Hirohito did not hesitate. "I do not desire any further destruction of cultures, nor any additional misfortune for the peoples of the world," he said. On this occasion, we have to bear the unbearable. The emperor cited 3 reasons for his decision, and it's crucial to note what he emphasized and what he did in single quotes. First, he had lost faith in Operation Decisive. He pointed to the long record of discrepancy between plans and performance by the military. Promised defenses hadn't been completed. Equipment was lacking. The plan wasn't credible. Second, he cited the increasing devastation from conventional and atomic bombing, the destruction of Japan's cities, the suffering of civilians it had to end. Third, and perhaps most significantly, he mentioned the domestic situation. This was code for something terrifying, the possibility of internal revolt, starvation, and complete societal collapse. Later, in a private letter to the Crown Prince that he never expected to be made public, Hirohito added a 4th reason: Japan's deficiency in science, a euphemism for atomic weapons and an underestimation of American industrial capability. Notice what the emperor did not emphasize: the Soviet invasion. In his reasoning to the Big Six, it barely rated a mention. The atomic bombs were the catalyst that forced his intervention. But here's where the story takes another dark turn. Even after the emperor spoke, even his divine authority was invoked, not everyone was ready to surrender. On August 10th, Japan transmitted its acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration with one condition: that the imperial institution be preserved. The Allies responded that the emperor would be subordinate to the occupation commander. This triggered another round of debate. Was this acceptable? Did it guarantee the emperor's safety and position? Meanwhile, in the War Ministry, younger officers were planning something desperate. Led by Major Hotanaka, they wanted to stage a coup to seize control of the imperial palace, prevent the emperor from broadcasting surrender, and continue the war. On the evening of August 14th, these conspirators went to War Minister Anami and begged for his support. Without Anami's backing, the coup had no chance of success. Colonel Masahiko Tokishita, Anami's brother-in-law, and one of the conspirators, later described what happened next. He found General Anami at home, sitting beside his bed, writing notes. The general looked up and said, without emotion, "I'm thinking of seppuku tonight." Tokishita tried to delay him. "It doesn't have to be tonight, does it?" Anami explained, "I decided on tonight because it is the 14th anniversary of my father's death." Then he added the real reason: "I just cannot bear to live through the emperor's surrender broadcast scheduled for tomorrow." They drank sake together. Tokishita pleaded for Anami's support of the coup. The general refused. He said the Eastern District Army would crush the rebellion, which is exactly what happened when Major Hotanaka proceeded anyway. As the clock struck 4 a.m. on August 15th, General Anami performed a ritual of seppuku. He plunged a short sword into his abdomen, pulled it horizontally across, then upward, the traditional disembowelment. Then he took a dagger and stabbed his own carotid artery. He left two notes. One said, "Confident of the eternity of our fatherland, I give my life to atone for great crimes." The other, "Having received great favors from the emperor, I have nothing to say in this hour of my death." Anami couldn't reconcile to opposing forces within himself, his fierce loyalty to military tradition, and his absolute obedience to the emperor. When these loyalties became irreconcilable, he chose death. The man who couldn't believe America's atomic bomb power, the man who argued most strongly for continuing the fight, died believing he was defending Japan's honor, even in surrender. At noon on August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito's voice crackled over radios across Japan. For the first time in history, ordinary Japanese citizens heard their emperor's voice as he announced the surrender. Using formal, archaic language that many struggled to understand, the war situation has developed, not necessarily to Japan's advantage, he said. One of history's greatest understatements. The emperor mentioned the atomic bomb explicitly in his broadcast. Moreover, the enemy has begun to employ a new and most cruel bomb, the power of which to do damage is, indeed, incalculable. But here's the final, bitter irony. American atomic bomb production in August 1945 was ramping up, but it wasn't yet the unlimited arsenal that Japanese leaders feared. According to declassified documents, the production schedule called for 3 bombs per month in August, rising to 5 per month by November and 7 per month by December. Japan's military leaders had been partially right. America didn't have an unlimited stockpile, but they were catastrophically wrong about what mattered. America didn't need an unlimited stockpile. 3 bombs per month was more than enough to systematically erase Japan's remaining cities, one by one, until nothing was left. General Anami and the military hawks had asked the wrong question. They asked, "How many bombs does America have right now?" The right question was, how many bombs can they produce before we're destroyed? So what can we learn from this tragedy? First, expertise can create blindness. Dr. Nishina's deep knowledge of atomic physics, his understanding of how difficult the process was, made it harder for him to believe America had succeeded. Sometimes being an expert means you know all the reasons something is impossible, which makes you overlook evidence that it happened anyway. Second, institutional momentum is powerful. Japan's military had spent years preparing for Operation Decisive, building an entire strategic framework around a homeland battle. When atomic bombs made that strategy obsolete, the institutional resistance to changing course nearly destroyed the nation. Third, confirmation bias in high-stakes decisions is deadly. General Anami and the military leadership saw what they wanted to see: evidence that America was bluffing, that the bombs weren't that significant, that traditional military logic still applied. They filtered information through their existing beliefs, rather than updating their beliefs based on new information. Fourth, revolutionary technologies create disruption that's hard to predict. The atomic bomb didn't just change war, it made conventional military strategy obsolete overnight. Organizations and leaders that can't adapt to technological disruption get left behind, or in this case, destroyed. Finally, sometimes the right decision is the hardest one. Emperor Hirohito's intervention saved millions of lives, Japanese and American, but it required breaking with centuries of tradition and bearing what he called the unbearable. Leadership often means making decisions that go against everything your training and culture have taught you. The Japanese military couldn't believe America's atomic bomb power. They had good reasons for their skepticism: scientific reasons, strategic reasons, even logical reasons. But they were wrong, and 125,000 people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki died as a result, along with countless others who would have perished if the war had continued. Today, we face our own revolutionary technologies: artificial intelligence, quantum computing, biotechnology, climate technology. Companies, governments, and institutions that dismiss disruption because it seems impossible, or because their experts know all the reasons it can't work, risk making the same catastrophic mistake. The question isn't whether revolutionary change is possible. The question is whether you'll recognize it in time. If you found this video valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most significant moments. Check out the description below for sources and further reading on the atomic bombings and Japan's surrender, and leave a comment. What modern technologies or changes do you think today's leaders are dismissing, just like Japan's military dismissed the atomic bomb? I read every comment and often feature them in future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.